Hey guys, it's Corpse here, and today I want to go over more in depth on how I would remake Hello Neighbor from my other video. Now, one of the biggest reasons why I'm making this video to begin with is because of my real interest in Hello Neighbor. Now, this is attributed to Bonnie Gamer's remake of the pre-alpha version of Hello Neighbor that came out recently. Now, before I get into how I would reconstruct Hello Neighbor, I want to give a little review of the game because it's actually mind-boggling that after all these years of this franchise being a thing, someone actually did an almost picture-perfect remake of the early versions of Hello Neighbor. Now, first things first is the positives. This game's atmosphere is everything I could ask for as a fan of the early alpha builds. I love seeing the unused items from those early builds like the garage door opener and the lock on the back door. The big thing I want to give credit to in this game is the AI and how it sticks to the original source. Just seeing the neighbor be so animated in this environment and do different things rather than just watch TV is something to get used to, especially in the pre-alpha house. Now, playing this, the amount of times I genuinely got jump scared by how this AI acts is unreal. Like in this clip here. The environment is nailed perfectly, blending stuff from all the early builds. For example, the grass crunching beneath your shoes, to the car alarm going off just like in the dev game animation. And even the little things, just like the change in noise where you're going up and downstairs like in the dev game animation. It all makes me feel like I'm in the original prototype trailer. Now, I did find some bugs in this game I would like to go point out. I know that this is just a pre-alpha, but so I can put some light on them, here are the bugs. I found out by spamming the hiding mechanic in the bed while the neighbor is trying to grab me, I flipped through the ground, making the run unbeatable. Something similar was when I was jumping onto the neighbor's porch to avoid a camera, and I literally ascended into the roof, getting me stuck, making the run unbeatable. Something else too I wouldn't really call a bug, but using the hammer on the door in certain spots is a bit wonky like here. Another thing too for me is how far the key and lockpick can be used. Like I said, I think it's a bit wonky, but that's just me. Some stuff I'd like to see added in future builds and updates is obviously a full house. This is the only version of the neighbor's house that I haven't seen get a full interior. And I'm excited to see what Bonnie Fan does, because he did say that he's adding more floors to this. Another thing I think would be a good addition is having the lawnmower move when turning it on, like an Alpha one and in the dev game animation. A small thing I think would be nice is bringing back the leaves falling like in the pre-alpha, just to add to the atmosphere. One final thing I think would be a nice addition is the neighbor's ability to knock down the doors off their hinges like in Alpha 1. To add farther, I think that it should only happen sometimes when they do come off their hinges. They should stay off to shake up the gameplay. Honestly, all in all, this is probably the best Hello Neighbor remake to this date. And like I said, it's getting me back into the world of Hello Neighbor and the old builds of it. And because of that, I think it'd be nice to tell you how I would go and remake Hello Neighbor myself if I had free creative control over it. Also, go subscribe to Bonnie Fan and follow this game. It's honestly like the best game ever, so link in the description. Now, starting off this whole video, I want to section off it in 3 different categories. 1. The art style and atmosphere. Number 2, the gameplay and mechanics. And number 3, this game's story. Now, starting off with the art style, I wouldn't really change too much from the original art style, but I would add more density to it. For example, I think the foliage around the neighbor's house could be touched up and feel more full. Just a thought I had is just a great setting for Hello Neighbor could be during a winter storm. I really do feel listening to the calm, cold breeze with a slight sound of animals or traffic before entering the neighbor's house would be just peak Hello Neighbor. But I think it gives off a sense of familiarity, but yet somehow desolate and ominous. I think it really suits Hello Neighbor completely. I did make a mock-up for this of what it could look and sound like, so here, just give it a listen and tell me what you think about it in the comments below. With my version of Hello Neighbor, I think a change in the lighting to be a lot more saturated would make it feel more realistic. Well, picturing this in the neighbor's house makes it feel a lot more darker. Lamps would mainly be used by the neighbor because I feel like people, like myself, use more lamps than they do with overhead like ceiling lights. And like I said, this brings in more of a familiar, but yet more ominous and just scarier environment than what the main game is. Well, what do I mean by this? Well, in-game at night, you can't see anything in front of you. Without a flashlight or the overhead light on, you cannot see a single thing. There are overhead lights in the game that can be turned on, but I'll get into much later how that works. Now, the sound design in my game, it's very different from the actual Hello Neighbor experience. In my version, it's much more silenter than what people are more used to. Walking into the neighbor's house, you'd usually hear that drone, but in my version, you'll just hear white noise in the air, with a slight creaking of the house, maybe some footsteps of you or the neighbor, or even a slight screaming of something. More on that later. Audio cues like the neighbor passing you, and even when he's super close, will be present in my version of the game. All in all, the art style and the atmosphere in my version is not that much different from the pre-alpha of Hello Neighbor, but it's just touched up here and there to make it more optimized and more polished and just feel more scarier. All in all, the art style in my version of Hello Neighbor is it's not much different than the pre-alpha, it's just touched up here and there. On to the next category is the gameplay and the gameplay loop, and how I think it could work in my version of Hello Neighbor. The biggest deviation, I think, in my version of the game is how walking and running is handled. More in the sense of the dev game animation, walking is a lot slower and more stiff in my version. Something about that just feels and looks more realistic, and I think it has more of a practical way to play. This is done well in all the Hello Neighbor builds besides the full game, ironically. Now, running is a whole different story in my game. The biggest change I'd add is adding a stamina mechanic, and making running a tiny bit slower. The biggest reason why I'm changing this is because of two things. One, the neighbor's house in my game is a lot smaller and more cramped, making it easier and slower to traverse the house, but also making it seem a bit bigger than it actually is. And number two is how the neighbor chases the player. I noticed in the full game, or even in the pre-alpha and alpha 1 builds of the game, is that the neighbor can lose you really quickly, or just loop around the house a couple times and there he goes, he's gone, making the whole chase just a lot more tense and just kind of dumbing down the gameplay loop. In my mind, I think it brings a lot more tension to the game, and it makes you utilize more items such as the TVs, alarms, microwaves, toilets, stuff like that to know where the neighbor is. Audio will be more of an important aspect since I did say that the game will mostly be quiet. For example, hearing footsteps of the neighbor will be quieter or louder depending on where he is in the house. He could also be above you or below you as well. For the offline mode, I wouldn't really change too much about it. It'll be very similar to the pre-alpha. In my game, the player and the neighbor have the ability to move furniture to block off certain parts of the house. The only caveat is that this is super loud. Now, just a small addition that I bring into my game is the animation for the dev game presentation is the staircase scene where you're going up and down the stairs. And then in that animation, it's a lot slower than what is actually presented in Hello Neighbor. And it just irks me because just looking at, here's gameplay right here if you want to see, but it just looks so wonky going up and down stairs, how fast you can go. It's just not realistic, and I do think it can add more tension when a neighbor's chasing you. The neighbor in my version can detect when items have been moved out of place, like in the AI rundown video. He can also hear if something gets thrown or if a light gets turned on that he didn't turn on, making it more riskier for the player to turn on lights to see. And this goes back to what I said about turning on overhead lights to see more in the dark in my art style and atmosphere section of the video. Last and final thing is this game's story, and before I get into it, the story is very similar to the actual Hello Neighbor story, but it's also radically different. Now, honestly, this might just be the shortest point I put in this video because I just had the basic idea of the story down. So, here it goes. You are the new guy in town, and while getting settled into your new house, you notice the neighbor's unusually big house across the street. With it being dark outside, you notice a red glow coming from the door that has an exit sign for some reason. With a strange scream coming from the neighbor's house, that begins to make you question and investigate. That's how the story begins. Now, throughout the story, it's slowly revealed that throughout different rooms of the neighbor's house, he once had a family. And because of that, he now sits alone in this huge house with the periodic sobbing from time to time. How his family disappeared is unknown, but it is speculated to be a car crash. Because of that, it's revealed that the neighbor began to get into new supernatural studying and trying to contact his family and somehow bring them back. With this in mind, it is revealed that the neighbor made the biggest mistake of his life. And what was that? Selling his soul to the devil to get his family back. This, for some reason, didn't go to plan, and now, the grand reveal of my story is when you open up the basement door, the basement isn't the actual basement or some big old, parallel to... No, it's a portal to hell. And now, since that's opened, you've unleashed hell onto Earth. The neighbor's house is like a big labyrinth for people to go searching for items in to get to the basement, but they always get lost in it. The neighbor isn't some bad guy, not a murderer, none of that. He's just a man who wanted his family back, and made a very crucial mistake, and now he's trying to protect, I guess, the whole world. It sounds a bit corny when you say it out loud, but I thought it was a cool idea of thinking it. And just to sum it up, the whole game quote that I thought of was, "Your curiosity killed the cat." So yeah, that's the video. This is a very short video, but I am starting to make a new video, and it's going to be hopefully a longer video. I'm going to put a lot more effort into it than this video, which that sounds a bit bad, but honestly, throughout halfway doing this, I'm like, oh, do I really want to do this? But I'm going to put it out because I thought it was a cool idea. And just let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. If any of this sounds good. I think it sounds pretty good. And yeah, stay tuned for the next video. It's going to be a little bit because it's going to be a longer video. But I hope you guys like it. It's something very, what's the word I'm looking for? If you know it, you know. That's all I'll say. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all for the amount of support my videos have gotten. My FNAF video is 13k views. That's fucking ridiculous. But yeah, thank you all so much for the amount of subs too. Please, I'm very, very grateful. See you guys next video. Peace. Bye.